Restraints, bondage, spicy books, all that and more in this episode. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Road to Happiness podcast. We're Josh and Cassie Spurlock, your hosts, and we're thrilled that you're hanging out with us as we look at what the Bible and neuroscience has to say about your happiness. We want to do a shout out to our sponsor, My Counselor Online, the leading provider of Christian counseling online. If you find yourself in a season of life where having somebody come alongside you to navigate the obstacles between you and experiencing the fullness of life that Jesus designed you for, the Christian counselors at My Counselor Online would be thrilled to serve you, your marriage, your family. Check them out at My Counselor Online and stay tuned for the episode. Hey friends, we're back with another episode of the Road to Happiness podcast, and we are continuing our series on our new book, Feeling Sexy. If you caught the last episode, we're in chapter 19 on Kinky. Then is the question mark after it. Can Christians engage in kinky sex? And what does that mean? And what does the Bible say? We cover all of that in the last episode. So if you haven't watched the last episode or listened to the last episode, would strongly encourage you to pause this episode, jump back to part 1 of chapter 19 on Kinky, because we lay a lot of foundational thoughts that I think are important for picking up the conversation today around, some topics like bondage, getting all tied up.
Why are you looking at me like that?
Spicy books. That's right. We're going to take on the topic. I don't know that anybody else is talking about spicy books. We're going to talk about spicy books right here on this episode. So
I just had that thought. Nope, nobody's talking about it, but Christian women are buying 50% of the spicy books on the market.
A lot of Christian women buying spicy books, but nobody's talking about it. Well, we're going to talk about it today. So, thanks for joining us for the conversation. Buckle up. We're going to have fun. And when I buckle up, I don't mean like in a bondage restraint kind of way, unless you want to, Ned, which you're welcome to. Yeah. So we've been talking about, what are some of these things and what's the appeal of some of these things if you've never played in this area of the playground that God has given us freedom within. And so, we want to maybe pique your curiosity or maybe speak to and answer some of the questions that you have and really just erase shame, neutralize shame. If you've ever had interest or played in these ways with your spouse and maybe have thought, is that okay? What does God think about that? How does he feel about that? Is that allowed within the Christian space? And so see the last episode for the deep dive. But the short answer is that so long as our engagement sexually is consensual, monogamous, and mutual, it falls within the protective fences around the playground that God created for us to really enjoy sex. And within that playground, there is room for endless curiosity and creativity and exploration and things that we can enjoy and play and engage with. So, we want for you to be able to have freedom when it comes to your sex life, to be curious and to explore. And so what is it? What is bondage? Right? I hate using the word bondage because it's got so much bondage baggage.
Oh, bondage baggage.
Bondage baggage. Do you like what I did there?
Bondage baggage. That little alliteration.
Yes,
alliteration. I feel proud.
I know. You love alliterations.
I do.
Yeah, so a lot of times in the church context, we talk about bondage in the terms of like chains and chains of sin.
It's a bad thing.
It is a bad thing.
We don't want them.
We want to break free
Christ
from
came
the bondage.
for freedom.
And so I think it can't be good.
You get bonded when you're arrested, like everything negative with the bondage.
that can't be good. But what it is essentially just restraints, right? In some form. like handcuffs or ropes or other kinds of cuffs, Starting to get a little pink there. Look at you. It's some sort of constraint of movement is essentially what bondage means, or restraints. And it can have an appeal for a few different reasons.
Yes, why would anybody in their right mind be interested in that?
Well, sometimes it's just the novelty of it, right? Like there's this taboo and kind of like, that's kinky. That's kind of
wild.
Yeah, it's wild. And so the exhilaration or excitement and that whole chemical cocktail that we talked about in the last episode that gets infused with and supercharges sexual arousal when it's introduced in the bloodstream becomes a part of the novelty and excitement when it comes to it. So sometimes that's it. And these aren't mutually exclusive. It can be multiple things that are a part of the appeal for engaging in this kind of play. But the novelty is a part of it. Sometimes the unpredictability, like what's going to happen? I don't know. I'm tied up.
I have no control.
I have no control. What could happen? And that unknown creates some angsty excitement that, again, because there's consent and because of their safety, our brain interprets that as exhilaration and excitement, and it supercharges arousal. If we didn't have consent and we didn't have safety, being tied up, being restrained would be terrifying.
It'd be
scary. It would not be sexy, would not be fun, right? And so enjoying that kind of play doesn't mean that you want to be restrained against your will without consent in real life. It simply means that in the conditions of consent and safety, our brain knows it's pretend, knows that it's play. And so we can still experience the angsty excitement, but our brain interprets it as exhilaration and it supercharges arousal as opposed to it being terrifying and scary and bad, right? And so that unpredictable what's going to happen creates that angsty excitement cocktail in our bloodstream and nervous system that can help supercharge it. And then there's a power exchange kind of dynamic that sometimes there's this component of surrender and this component of being taken in a way that can feel really exciting and really alluring. And that's a really normal, fun kind of power dynamic that can have its own energy to it that can create arousal and feed arousal and strengthen arousal. So not for everybody. It's not a prescription that, hey, if you're going to have a good sex life, you've got to
you better do this.
Yeah, you got to play in this part of the playground. Like, no, there's no compulsion, command. There's no part of the playground that you have to play in. This is all about the freedom to explore and be curious, that the safety of God's fences that he puts around the defining our sex life gives us freedom to explore and have fun and be playful in. So if you're curious and you want to consent and your spouse consents to this experimenting in this kind of play, if it's between just you and your spouse, right? No OnlyFans account, no kind of third parties of some sort involved, just you and your spouse having fun, playing together, and both enjoying the play, then it's totally in bounds for you to explore. See if it might be something you get into. So, yeah.
There's a lot of those things. That, like, we're just naming a few of the unlimited things that God is like, this is the feast for you to choose from. How do you want to navigate that? And what do you guys get to create together? And how do you get to grow together? And how do you get to have fun and learn and be vulnerable together?
Yeah. So what about spicy books?
What about spicy books?
Yeah, inquiring minds want to know. What about spicy books? So, a couple of caveats before we dive in. I don't know anybody else talking about spicy books in the Christian space. That I'm sure there's lots of opinions being expressed here and there, but in terms of, meaningfully dialoguing around the subject, it's one of those things that kind of happens in hushed conversations, and around the ladies' Bible study. And,
Like, I read such and such. Oh, you read such and such? I read it too.
and a few strong opinionated people that have their strong opinions about it, vocalizing what everybody's conviction should be around it, right? Then people of that persuasion, always like to define what other people's convictions should be on a matter, which is whatever their conviction is on that matter. So we want to start out by saying we're not here to tell you what your convictions should be.
For sure.
Like, that's not our job. That's not our place. That's a conversation that you have to have with Jesus, right? You have to kind of be in a place of working out your salvation and your behavior, your choices, but in a conversation and a dialogue with the Lord. And, we trust the Holy Spirit to bring conviction and lead into truth and to help us walk rightly before the Lord. And so this, like lots of different areas in life, there aren't black and white rules that tell us exactly what to do in every situation of life. And God designed the thing like that on purpose.
Yeah.
Because he wants us to live by the Spirit, walk by the Spirit. He wants us to be in an ongoing dialogue with him. And one way he has pushed us, prompted us to do that, is not answering all the questions.
Yes.
Right? But instead, we're leaving it in a space where we have to seek his face and bring our heart humbly before him.
Such an interesting point, because he could have set it up so differently. Like, he could have been where any question you had, God Googled it, and then you knew the answer, and that's how you moved forward in life. And Old Testament was very much like that in a lot of ways.
And a lot of things.
So many things, so many laws, so many responsibilities, restrictions, all these things. But Christ came for us to have an open relationship with the Father.
And the scriptures tell us that the Old Testament law just brought attention to how that kind of system doesn't work. That all it does is bring condemnation to us, because none of us can live up to that kind of structure. And so there's a lesson in that for the world and for us, and that while part of us wants it to be black and white and simple, the truth is that it doesn't work. It didn't work for the Israelites. It won't work for us.
We can never achieve God's perfect holiness.
So all that to say is, when it comes to spicy books, we're not going, spoiler alert, we're not going to tell you what you should or shouldn't do, can or can't read, or, that's not the point of the conversation. But instead, the point is to encourage you to have a conversation with the Lord about what's right for you, what's not right for you, and to encourage you in this matter of conscience, as Paul talks about it, to be respectful of and honoring of others that have a different conviction than you.
Yeah.
And so, I love Paul in Romans 14:22. He says, "Blessed are those who don't feel guilty for doing something they've decided is right." That there's something very healthy and wholesome and blessed by being able to have convictions and to feel at peace within your convictions, even if they differ from others. And that's totally the context that Paul's speaking in chapter 14 of Romans, where there are all these matters of conscience that are in question about, attending and celebrating different religious days, one as more important than the other, or eating meat sold at the local meat market that had been sacrificed to idols, or, all of these different things that were mixed opinions within the early church and creating tension and conflict, each side having their points as to why something is okay or not okay. And Paul also not saying this or that, right? Instead, encouraging folks to bring their heart before the Lord, to, feel freedom within what they feel freedom for the Lord, and to have grace and kindness and respect for those that landed in a different place. So we want to encourage the same thing. We want to echo what the scriptures say, and we're going to do like the scriptures do, because we don't want to go beyond the scriptures either, and encourage you to have a conversation with Jesus. Because at the end of the day, what Josh and Cassie say doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like when King Jesus returns and you give account for your life, being like, well, Josh said or Cassie said, that is not going to get you anywhere. So you have to work this out between you and the Lord. But that being said, we also want to just share some different perspective, because within the conversation, the dialogue around spicy books, the loud voices tend to be the ones that are, got an axe to grind around not thinking sexy books are appropriate or okay for Christians. So we just want to talk about some of the counter arguments or thoughts around that as part of the conversation and dialogue. So, yeah, you ready?
Ready.
Right, buckle up. Here we go. So, this is not about bondage. We already moved on from that section.
Some of us have moved on.
Some maybe haven't moved on. That's okay. So, the one of the arguments around why spicy books may not be okay is that within spicy books, a lot of times the storyline and the narrative is not something that would be okay in real life.
Yeah.
Right? That if
Characters
lived out,
might not be married.
Characters might not be married. They might engage in things that would be sinful if acted out in real life. And so there's a argument to be made, and it's valid and makes sense. It's not crazy. And that for saying, hey, finding entertainment in or reading, engaging in a story that where the characters engage in things that are not
sinful,
that are sinful, is not something that a Christian should do. And that makes sense and is a fair kind of argument. I think if we're going to hold logically true to that, though, there's implications that, go much broader, that would have a lot of implications for any book that you read that has Christians in it, that are characters in it that are non-Christians, or movies where there are non-Christians in it. And there's a lot of, in fact, the Bible itself would be one of those. Like there's a lot of things a lot of stories in the Bible of things people do that are sinful.
For sure.
And that are not what people should do. And yet it's recorded in the scriptures. And most of us would encourage people to read the Bible, I think. And so if we can't read anything.
Well, we think differently about like if it's talking about a sexual thing versus like if we read a story about gossip, or we read a story about murder, or we read a story about, and yet
there's a lot of stories about sexual things within the Bible, that, should not be. Like, stories about incest, there's stories about polygamy, there's stories about all sorts of
people watching other people take showers.
Yeah. And then kind of, lewd scenes in Song of Solomon, or you're peeping into the bedroom or secret garden of a couple in this context. Like there's racy things within the Bible. And, most of us would encourage folks to read their Bible. So, I think there's an argument to be made that just because a story contains features, storylines or characters who do things or say things that would not be in keeping with maybe what God would have them do, doesn't mean that they're not allowed for entertainment or enjoyment of reading. So that's some thoughts around that component, just food for thought to consider. I think another common objection to spicy books is the equating of spicy books with pornography, saying, these are just written pornography in a way that is, is destructive in the same way that pornography is destructive. And that makes sense. Pornography, displays visually the sexual acts taking place, and is certainly destructive in its nature. And the descriptions of sexual acts within some spicy books, are describing sexual acts happening. And so it makes sense that there would be a comparison that's made there, and it is logical in how folks get there.
And wanting to be important, responsible stewards, knowing how devastating and destructive pornography is, and wanting to make sure that we're not choosing a path that's devastating or destructive.
Totally, 100%. On the other hand, that the fictional narratives in stories are in spicy books are quite a bit different than the real life engagement of people sexually in pornography. Pornography is inherently distorted and is defrauding of people. Like it uses folks. The whole industry is significantly broken. That the people who are involved, particularly the ladies that are involved, the coercion, the broken backgrounds, the exploitation of the women in particular in that industry is heartbreaking to the heart of God. Like real harm comes to real people every day because of the porn industry, and is fed by people who participate and engage in porn. And so it's inherently destructive in real life to real people. It makes it broken in that, and to participate in it really broken and contributing to a real brokenness in society in the world, and the exploitation of the vulnerable in the world. This is something that's not true of reading fictional characters in a spicy book. That there's no exploitation of real people in a way that's grievous to the heart of God. No participating in that or supporting of it through consuming fictional stories in a spicy book. So it's very different from pornography in that regards. It's also really different in the way that it impacts the brain. Like there's well-documented studies around how the consumption of pornography can rewire our brain's sexual responsiveness in a way that can actually leave men impotent. Some points where sexual response can be wired to unreality of pornography in a way that hinders their ability to connect in real life in sexual relationships. And the way sex is depicted in pornography is so far removed from reality that it conditions the brain to be responsive to something that's not achievable in the real world in a way that does some real harm to our sexual response. And so there's no studies that replicate that in regards to fictional characters in kind of spicy books. So that effect that we see and is well documented for the impact of pornography, particularly in male sexuality, but also in female sexuality. There's studies with both men and women and the effects and long-term effects of pornography use and its detrimental effect to sexual enjoyment, sexual response, and engagement in relationship. And so there's a difference between spicy books and pornography in its impact on our nervous system and in our sexual response as well. So it's not one for one. It's not the same in that regard also. So I think that's an important difference and distinction to hold in mind as well. And then there's this kind of piece around, the idea of, what's the net effect that pornography tends to take away from the sexual relationship between a husband and wife. Like there's this place of men in particular, but men and women directing their sexual energy and response away from their spouse in a way that defrauds their spouse of healthy connection and feels violating, like bringing somebody else, a real person by way of the video, into the marriage bed, the couple, and feels offensive and defrauding to the spouse. Right? That's a common experience that couples have in feeling being cheated on and feeling of infidelity and unfaithfulness in a way that creates pain and disconnection in a relationship between husband and wife in a way that isn't replicated with spicy books. Like I have done 13,000 hours of therapy. I've done lots of sex therapy. I've done lots of marriage therapy. I have had lots and lots of couples where pornography has been very destructive in their marriage and has caused a lot of hurt and feelings of betrayal and disconnection and loss of trust and pain of all sorts.
Yeah.
I've never had a case where that was the experience with a spicy book.
Not that it couldn't be.
Not saying that it couldn't be.
Absolutely.
There are, lots of things world. I'm just in 20 years of practice, 13,000 hours, hundreds of couples. I've never seen it as a practice. We have seen thousands of couples, and I know of no reported instances where a spicy book created the sense of betrayal and disconnection in relationship. But in the same way that pornography does, routinely.
And I think that is an important part of the journey of exploring where you're at with spicy books. Like, you do need to have a conversation. Your spouse is part of that journey and that
100%.
conversation. Like, they need to know, they need to be okay with it if that's what you're going to do, because it matters. This is so very important. And if they feel defrauded, or if they feel insecure, or if they feel any number of things, like, we have to examine the fruit of what comes from reading spicy books. Not as a whole on the culture, but you and your spouse have to have that conversation and have to engage that with each other as an open dialogue and honestly and ongoingly.
Yeah. I think one last point of comparison is around the addictive nature and the addictive cycles that pornography has. That pornography tends to be addictive in its nature, and it tends to be used in a way that is a a medication for numbing or escaping or regulating distress, emotional experiences. And so it's a turning to a sexual channel to address a non-sexual problem or to escape from uncomfortable emotions or stress or pain of one sort or another, in kind of a hijacking of the body's natural systems for enjoyment in order to mask and address other difficulties and problems in life. And so that comparison can be made. And it's certainly, I think, erotic literature in spicy books can, like many things in life, you can have an unhealthy relationship with it.
Totally.
Just as you can with food, as you can with alcohol, as you can with golf.
It can just be a coping mechanism when you're
Crafting.
Uncomfortable. Yeah, like we want to have healthy coping mechanisms for the challenges of life that involve relationships with other people and real processing and real things.
Totally. So certainly there is the possibility that spicy books can become or any kind of books,
any book,
fantasy books or whatnot, can become an escape from reality in a way that distracts from one's life. And then, but it no more so than any other kind of.
It's not about the spice.
It's not about the spice.
Yeah, it's about the escaping.
It's about the escapism within it. That's right. So, like you said, the important piece, one of the important pieces, is you really got to evaluate the fruit, right? What is the impact in your life of spicy books, right? And is that fruit good or is that fruit bad?
Yeah.
And then when it comes to pornography, there's a lot of bad that comes out of using pornography. And there are situations where spicy books could create some have bad fruit in your life.
Yeah.
And that matters. There isn't a one-size-fits-all answer for all people. These things. It's why we have to talk to the Lord about these things. But for a lot of women, the fruit they would report as being good. Ned.
Yeah,
some would say it's very good.
That's an interesting, unexpected maybe before we were engaging this space, like the amount of women that talk about confidence and ideas and engaging their arousal in ways that they thought were dead, but it's alive and now I can turn that and engage my spouse in that way. And so just interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of women that would say that not only is the fruit of spicy books good for them in terms of entertainment and just like any other book or genre of literature that they enjoy reading and find a lot of enjoyment out of, but would also say that specifically when it comes to the sexual aspect of their life, that the engagement of fantasy in that space helps to bring alive that aspect of their sexuality and imagination that they haven't maybe engaged before, and allow them to explore and consider and imagine things sexually that actually benefit, feed, fuel, in all the ways that we have talked about God's equipping us with imagination and with fantasy, and how it can be a tool for cultivating a really healthy and robust sex life with our spouse. That many women would report that they experience the catalyst of engaging, the spice in different books in a way that has that benefit or has that effect for them. And so
there are women I know, love, trust, respect, that fall on two completely strongly different sides, very pro and very against. And so I just think that's so gracious of God to be like, I have my own relationship with you. I have my own relationship with you guys as a couple. And I want to have that dialogue with you and you guys. And for that to be personal and intimate with us and him and each other.
Yeah, so I really want to end the conversation where we began the conversation about spicy books and saying that we can't answer this question for you. And we're not arguing for you to watch spicy books or read spicy books. We're not arguing for you to not read spicy books. Like, we're not expressing an opinion about what you should do when it comes to spicy books. What we are encouraging you to do is talk to Jesus. Like, he wants to talk with you. He wants to have a personal relationship with you where you are able to come to him and you are able to wrestle with the things of this life. In parenting, in your marriage, in your job, in your friendships, in what you watch on TV, how you use your time, how you spend your money, and what kind of books you read. Like, it matters to him, and he wants for you to be able to engage dialogue with him and for you to allow the Holy Spirit to bring conviction and lead you into truth and for you to live out your life walking by the Spirit in that way. That's the life we want for you. That's the life that will bring healing to your world, that will bring maturity to you in a way that enables you to experience the peace and the joy and the satisfaction in life with hope for the future. What we call true happiness on the road to happiness is engaging in that sort of personal relationship with Jesus. So that's what we want to encourage you to, is to go and have the conversation with the Lord and to have grace with all the people who fall in a different camp than you do. Whatever your convictions are, whatever you walk away, to follow the exhortation of the Apostle Paul to the first century church as they wrestled with their own questions of conscience and had people within their church communities that saw things differently and had different convictions on these things, that you would, not feel guilty around that which you don't have convictions around, nor would you shame or cause neurotic guilt in others by trying to force your convictions on them and, believing that they need to see the world the same way that you do or share your same convictions in all things. So be gracious with one another, be gracious with yourself, and enjoy the freedom that God gives you in whatever domain, whatever aspect, whatever that looks like for you. So that's what we're cheering you on for. And this is part 2 of a 3-part series of episodes on Kinky for Christians, answering and talking through the questions that Christians have about kink and what that means for their sex life. So if you didn't catch part 1, make sure you go back, watch part 1. It lays a foundation for this episode and for the next one. And man, in the next episode, have we got some spicy things to talk about. So we'll see you back here soon.